Hi everyone, coming up for the next few weeks I've got some real student examples for first language English work. I always write my own examples and it's kind of hard to show you genuine student mistakes or where students genuinely do something really good. Of course I've got lots of experience and I tried to put myself in a student mindset, but I'm still an adult with an English degree, right? So some of my masterclass students have very kindly allowed me to share their work with you all. So I'm really excited to show you all some narratives, some descriptions, some directed writing, question 2D, all of that coming up, but starting today, of course, with some narrative writing. Today's A-star narrative example comes to us from one of my masterclass students, PL. Shout out to PL, you know who you are. And he wrote a really wonderful story based on the prompt, The Portrait. If you would like to join one of my masterclasses, just like this student did, I have got one starting at the beginning of August, so it's coming up soon. There's the QR code for the masterclass. I've also got other group classes coming up, including a long-term first language class, long-term IB class. I was thinking of doing some literature masterclasses. You guys might actually end up forcing me to teach a Midsummer Night's Dream, which I've been avoiding for years. Yeah, if you want to see what group classes are coming up and what events are coming up, then just scan the QR code. And finally, I have got some first language free courses and also a premium writing course that's coming out really soon. There are all the links. Go ahead, go to my website, check it out. By the way, some of you guys think that I'm like a huge company. It's just me. Just me. Well, also my husband helps to do the website stuff, but it's literally just me, right? So please don't get mad if I don't reply to your emails right away. I am one lady. All right, let's get on to the meat and potatoes of today's lesson, or as I am a vegetarian, should I say the tofu and soy sauce of the lesson? Because that's the best bit of the meal for me. So this is based on a real past paper prompt called The Portrait. As we read this example, I want you guys to think about the mark scheme. So of course you guys all know that you get marked for two different areas for first language English narrative writing. So you get a mark awarded for content and structure and a completely separate mark awarded for style and accuracy. So for content we're looking, do you have an engaging plot? Is it interesting? Does it make sense? Does it all kind of connect together? Am I genuinely enjoying reading your story? Do you have good features of narrative writing such as characterization, description, dialogue and setting? And do they all build up to a really effective climax where I'm like, ooh, that all connects. That interests me. That makes sense. Maybe even I didn't see that coming, but now that I think back to all the clues that you've hidden along the way in your story, yeah, I can see what you were doing. The structure, the examiner is looking for correct paragraphing, that your plot is coherent. Some of my masterclass students, one of the areas where they fell down was they had a twist at the end of their story and it felt completely random. So we worked towards, okay, this is the ending, this is the twist. What are you going to put in here so that twist doesn't feel random? What are those little clues and hints that are very subtle, not too obvious, so that by the time that I get to your climax, I'm like, oh, damn, that makes sense. I didn't see that come in, but now that I look back, I can totally see that you had that in mind the whole time. A really good thing that you can do for both descriptive and narrative writing is try to include a circular structure. Thinking of doing a video lesson on that one actually. And basically that's where you start and end the story with a similar idea or theme or symbol. Maybe you come back to the same place. Maybe you use a similar phrase or something like that, because it shows that you're being really deliberate. And there's that word again, deliberate clues. Basically, Cambridge are looking to see when you're plotting out your story, have you done everything on purpose to create an effect? Or have you got into the exam hall and gone, bah, that's my story, and hope for the best without planning, without forethought, without deliberation? Style and accuracy is kind of your spelling, punctuation and grammar criterion. So for accuracy, of course, accurate spelling, punctuation and grammar. But for style, I'm looking to see, the texture of your language. Is it making me feel something? Is it kind of beautiful? Is it creative? Have you got sophisticated vocabulary that you are using precisely? Is your punctuation varied and used correctly? Are your sentences varied and used correctly? Especially things like not repeating the same opening, so always beginning a sentence with I, the, or noun. Have you got different sentence lengths and different sentence constructions? Or are all of your sentences subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object? That gets repetitive to read and it doesn't ooze style and substance, And does your register, your tone, does it sound like you're actually writing a story? Or do you get maybe a bit too scientific, a bit too academic, and it starts to feel more like a list of events or like a science report? I sometimes see with some of my more science and maths minded tutees. Now let's read the example story from PL. Okay, so here is the OneNote that I used with my masterclass students, and you guys will be able to see the level of marking that you would get if you joined one of my masterclasses too. So hopefully you'll be able to figure out, where this student is going really well and the areas that they could improve. Let's have a look at the portrait. It was a bright, cold evening of summer, and Anna shuddered into her coat in an effort to escape the biting wind. As she slipped into her new flat with the last of the boxes, she dropped her keys into the bowl in the hallway and paused to kick off her boots. I thought, here is it, a 1984 reference. So already very clever. And you can see here that the student even came up with an idea of a setting and created some backstory, which I really love that they did that. So far, an interesting opening, some nice description. Anna shuddered into her coat, the biting wind. So we've got some really nice vocabulary choices there. And we've definitely got a sense of character and setting that are beginning to come through. The apartment was a small, battered space that had not seen much renovation since the late 70s, according to the last owner. The heater whined like a dying horse, and the pale blue wallpaper peeled out the corners like old scabs. Still, it was hers. Nice sense of setting here now, especially. We've got some good vocabulary. Anywhere the student used good vocabulary, I gave that a tick, just as your examiner would. The renovation, the heater whined, old scabs, lovely, lovely vocab. I wasn't sure about the like a dying horse, if that was creating the tone that the student wanted, but I did like this bit of voice here. Still, it was hers. You get a sense of the way that the narrator kind of speaks and is thinking and their emotions from that sentence is deceptively simple but so effective. Anna moved towards the small stack of boxes between the tube telly and rudimentary kitchen that was most definitely stuffed with several biohazardous organisms. Brackets there creating that humour, that kind of sarcastic voice again that really creates this sense of character, even though we've got this third person narrator. And gently placed the last box on top of the others. They were the last remnants of her old life. So we've got this tension building. We're wondering, okay, why is she moved into this new apartment by herself? Why is she so thankful to have this small apartment as her own? What was her old life? So we've got the story. It's beginning to develop a plot. It's beginning to develop some tension, some mystery. I'm curious. I'm interested. And again, good vocab, remnants, and this colon here to introduce the next paragraph of what are the remnants of her old life. So used very effectively. And I put here in this paragraph, any clues here? Let's find out. So I was curious to see if any of these clues that were in this paragraph would come up later on in the ending. Clothes, hygiene stuff, some crumpled drawings, a shoebox filled with CDs, a hand of game cartridges, the old yellow console, and an annual from the end of senior school. Okay. I am intrigued, but I was wondering if any of this will come up. I guess we'll have to read to find out. Small error here, so A should be a small a because it's not a proper noun. Now all of that was done. She just had to sort through the mess and figure out where everything would go. Great. Again, this lovely sarcastic voice coming through. Thankfully, she did not have a lot of things to unpack. Unfortunately, however, she was the only one left to do it. Anna's parents weren't dead, but they might as well have been. The new recession of the early 90s had hit them hard, like most, and suddenly the scaffolding of family life cracked completely. Her father buried himself in contract work abroad, gem shipping to the continent, and her mother vanished into one managerial role after another. I love this, really love this. Some nice backstory, really giving a sense of this character's life. She feels like a real person to me already. The only bit that I didn't quite love was the sentence structure of thankfully, unfortunately, however. I think it's because you've got two adverbs, thankfully, unfortunately. So beginning the two sentences with words that begin with ly feels a bit repetitive. And the unfortunately, however, I felt maybe was a bit awkward. But I quickly forgave the student because I just loved this bit here. Anna's parents weren't dead, but they might as well have been. I put that oof. That hits me in the heart. You know, a good story makes you feel something. I'm feeling something. I was wondering, I did like the metaphor of the scaffold in the family life, but when the student said that scaffolding actually literally cracks, so I wondered maybe the scaffolding of her life tumbled down might be more accurate. But just love this. And also, again, look at the vocabulary. Managerial, gem shipping to the continent. So you've got some really nice, precise vocab being used here. Now she had completely accepted that they were simply trying to survive and give her a stable future. but as a child she could only see that they had chosen work over her. It's quite an emotionally mature piece, I think. Latchkeys, the anthropologist called kids like her, those who came home to an empty house, left to fend for themselves with their parents put in long hours at jobs to pay the bills. Just interesting. Again, some of the best stories that I read are when students lean into their interests. If you care about sociology, about psychology, about history, about architecture, bring those ideas into your stories, because it makes it feel more alive when you've got these kind of real parts of our everyday life and world embedded into your story. She pulled the boxes into smaller piles, one for those she would need to use on a daily basis, and one that might just gather dust in the cupboard forever. Okay, so I'm still getting some tension here. What is going on? Why is she in this flat? Peeling the drafting tape of the first box in the forgotten... Hang on, what does this say? Peeling the drafting tape of the first box in the forgotten of a cupboard pile. I might just highlight that one as an awkward. Maybe I'm being silly, but I think that's a bit of an awkward phrase. Anna found herself staring at a tangle of wire and plastic. The old yellow Co 90. I think that's a games console. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Black, bulky and scratched. Its trademark yellow Y logo still clung stubbornly to the corner. The cartridges wedged between the console, and the box wall slipped free as she lifted it out. It was lighter than she remembered. So here, okay, we're going back. Remember before, the things that she pulled out? She had the yellow console. Now we're looking at the yellow console. So it seems like it is taking on a bigger significance. That's making me go, okay, the student has done something deliberate here. They did plant a clue. They're coming back to it. They're developing it. And some quite nice description too. I did like the tricolon here of black, bulky and scratched. Very nice. Her throat tightened. Beneath the games lay something flatter, wrapped in a crinkled grocery bag from a now defunct store. Great vocab there. She slipped it out carefully, and her breath caught. It was a framed portrait. Okay, we're getting to the prompt. It was a framed portrait. Anna did not remember it being tucked into this box, and for a moment she simply stared at it, frozen. Really effective sentence structure there. Simply stared at it, comma, frozen. It makes you read it in a very deliberate way, and it puts emphasis on that word frozen, and we kind of end there for a new paragraph. So even the structure of the sentence and the paragraph mirrors that frozen feeling. So it's very deliberate, nice sentencing, and shows a lot of control too, They're sentencing really accurately so far. So they're using complex sentences, but they're also using them correctly. That's hard to do, to use your commas and full stops in the first place. That might sound like I've got a low bar. Having looked at a lot of stories over the years, trust me, it's not. It's like being able to sentence effectively is impressive. It was of her, the portrait, it was of her and her old friend Lyric. They must have been 12 at the time the photo was taken. They were sitting on the steps of his home at Frostholm, grinning widely. Now here I put, for Lyric, this is the first time in the whole story that we've heard this name. And so I put, would this be more effective if the name or the person or the friendship had been previously mentioned? Because we've kind of got halfway to the story and now, bang, Lyric. Well, who's Lyric? So it maybe feels a bit abrupt and random. And I do think placing it earlier on would make this part seem less disconnected from what we've already read. Lyric. There had been no falling out, no dramatic goodbyes, but somewhere between the start of college and adulthood, they have drifted apart. The last she'd heard of him, he had moved to, let me just correct that, he had moved to study on the continent. Her fingers ran along the frame. The image of the two of them, young and carefree, stirred up something deep in her chest. The weekend spent playing video games in his living room, the endless chatter about Chronopiece, Wingman, and what other games they could afford. It all felt so far away now. Very nostalgic, reflective piece of writing there. She turned the photograph over and was startled to see a note written in jagged handwriting. Lyrics. You thought there would be something here. Anna smiled and shook her head. Those exact words had been an inside joke of Wingman. How long had it been since she'd last spoken to him? Almost a decade. She had no idea where he was now, what he was doing, or if he even remembered her. As she studied the portrait again, Anna considered placing it back in the box, to bury it in the past where it belonged. But the temptation to reach out again was overpowering. She could not bear for something to end without resolution. Her hand drifted to her cell phone in her pocket, but hesitation washed over her instantly. What would she even say? Hey, remember me? The kid who spent hours at your place playing video games? No, that wouldn't work. She dropped her hand from her pocket. Lyric had likely grown up, maybe moved on completely. What was the point of dragging up the past? But the longer she held the photographs in her hand, the more her mind wandered back. They had been so happy. Simple, no complications. They'd argue about high scores, laugh at ridiculous plot lines. She sighed. The more she stood there, the colder the apartment seemed to get. But it was not the cold that bothered her. It was the emptiness, the absence of familiarity. This bit here I thought was really emotive. The tone is making me feel something, and kind of the observation about how someone might feel in that moment. It shows a great self-awareness of the student's own feelings in their daily life that they've brought into their story. Anna hesitated a moment longer, then pulled her cell phone from her pocket. Her thumb hovered over the keypad as she entered the contact lists. She couldn't. What if he had changed? What if he had forgotten everything? She bit her lip, but she couldn't let go. With a deep breath, Anna scrolled to the L section of her contacts, where its only name stood unchanged since the day she first saved it. Lyric D. Anna's thumb hovered over the call button. Lyric, she thought again. She hadn't heard his voice in so long. She wondered how he would sound now. Her thumb hovered one last time before she pressed the button. The call began to dial. Okay, so I don't know if you guys had the same impression that I had. Now, my impression was when we read the first half of the story, I was wondering, what's the tension? What's the mystery? What's this building to, basically? And so the kind of themes and questions that were coming up for me, why is she by herself? Why are her parents basically dead to her now if she's kind of realised they kind of had to do what they had to do? What is the significance of this box and the games console and so on? And I feel like the second half doesn't quite match all of that. Partly that is to do with Lyric not being mentioned earlier on, but also I do think that the question of why is she alone in this apartment? Why aren't her parents here? What's happened to her? Those aren't fully answered. So for me, it feels like a story of two halves. On the first half, you've got that kind of lonely, isolated in an apartment, latchkey kid story. And the second half, you've got the story of Lyric. And I didn't feel that connection. So I wrote to the student, an interesting, well-written story with heart and maturity. My suggestion would be, this feels like a story of two halves. Parents, childhood neglect, loneliness. Lyric, hope for reconnection. Can you find a way to more smoothly transition between the two? Lyric appears only at the halfway point. This affected the student's writing, definitely for content and structure, but also I don't know if you noticed that as I was reading out, I wasn't saying as often, "Ooh, look at this vocab." And I do think that's perhaps because the story has become a tiny bit too long, where by the end they're trying to get to the climax and they're kind of forgetting a little bit about their vocabulary and their sentencing. So it's still accurate, but the language is not as impressive as the first half. I mean, if I just let you guys have a look, you can see that my notes are just becoming less and less because I'm like, yeah, clear, makes sense. But it's not got the beauty of something like latchkey kids, the anthropologist called kids like her, those who came home to an empty house, left to fend for themselves while their parents put in the long hours at jobs to pay the bills. Is kind of lost some of that beauty, or the metaphor of the scaffolding. So students often say to me things like, oh, what about the word count? Word count doesn't matter. It's a suggestion. As long as you're writing at least 2 sides, you've written enough. If you write more than that, it's not a big deal at all. But where it can become a big deal is if you are writing too much and therefore you forget the quality of your language because you're just rushing to get out a story but not thinking about how you're crafting that story. And this is an example of that. Having said that, it obviously scores really well. So let me talk you through the student scores. So for content and structure, the student scored 13 out of 16, which is just 1 mark away from the top band. So I put them right here. So I thought that they definitely had description, effective characterization, convincing details, 100%, all of these little bits about the narrator's backstory was so there, definitely convincing and felt real to me. But the climax didn't feel entirely like it was done for deliberate effect. So because of that, I had to think, on balance, is this complex, engaging, or effective? Or is it developed, engaging, and effective? And I felt like that disconnection made it less effective overall, essentially. So I gave it 13 out of 16. So close to being top band. I mean, it would still get an A star because the grade boundaries are roughly about 60% for that A or A star. So it would definitely still get that A star, but it's not quite in the top band for that disconnection reason. So I put here, because of lyric, at halfway point. So the characters are developed, his settings are developed, he's got effective description, his story makes sense, but it's not entirely well structured with an effective climax, effective tension, because that lyric point just comes at the halfway point and feels disconnected. He does have clues, but I couldn't overall say that the story was managed carefully for deliberate effect. So 13 out of 16. Similar story for style and accuracy. So the final third becomes less ambitious, I wrote. So I gave it 20 out of 24. So that again is similarly at the top of the second to top band. So his vocabulary is precise and he's got a range of sentence structures, definitely at the first half, slightly less so in the second half. His spelling, punctuation and grammar is almost always accurate, and his register is really effective. It sounds like a story and it sounds like a narrator, it sounds like a character. So I really wanted to put him in the top band, but just as I got to that second half, I was like, you're not always doing it here. It's lessened in quality. It's still high quality, but it's not the same quality as what you began with. So that's my first example story from my masterclass. I've got 2 more real student stories coming out, so do check out my channel, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And don't forget that if you would like to join me for one of my live masterclasses, that's 2 months intensive revision. We do 2 live lessons a week and you get 1 exam practice per week, which I give you feedback on, which will look just like that, students. So if you do want to join that, then scan the QR code or the link is in the description. We're starting in August. If you are joining me after that date, I have been running masterclasses pretty much like summertime and then like February time, so it's ready for the summer exams. So if you just go on my website and go in the events calendar, then you'll be able to see whatever classes are coming up. Thanks for watching this video and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.